We are recording. So, tansin na totamak, kamamak Mackenzie Brown itzigasan, nimiwi sagahiganek o shinia, mokinstis o taskonek, miigwach ni weekend. Hi, everybody. My name is Mackenzie. I hail from Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation, but I make my home here in Treaty 7 territory, Métis Region 3, in Mokinstis, or we call it Otaskonek in Cree. I'm joined here today with Tom. Tom, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Mackenzie. Hi, everybody. I'm Tom. I can still call myself the new marketing guy here at ITA. I also am in Mokinstis in Calgary. I lived here my whole life. My mother was from Calgary. My grandmother was born here, and my father's family comes from northern Saskatchewan. So really happy to be here with you. Thanks, Mackenzie.
Absolutely. And we're really excited. We're doing a kind of second part to our visitor ready market preparedness workshops that we've been doing. So if you haven't seen Kaylin Curtis's wonderful workshop on being visitor ready, I highly suggest you checking that out. It's on our website at www.indigenous-tourismalberta.ca. But we're very excited to have you for this workshop too. So I'm going to share my screen here, and we're going to start getting into it. So feel free as well that you can type into the chat box at any point in time. You can ask us any questions. I see Brian has messaged in, I can't find my audio and camera. That's because we have you in a webinar. So we don't have you in like a meeting right now. So when we come to questions, we can unmute you guys all so that you guys can ask some questions for sure. But perfect, sounds good. Tom, could you give me a thumbs up if you see my perfect, amazing. So let's jump right into things. So Tom and I are both coming to you from Treaty 7 territory, Métis Region 3. Feel free to chat into the chat box. Where are you coming from today? What traditional territories are you all coming and tuning in from today? But we would like to acknowledge that we are on traditional territories within Alberta. So we would like to acknowledge Treaty 6, 7, 8, 4, and 10, as well as the Métis regions. We have 8 Métis settlements and 6 Métis regions within the Métis Nation of Alberta. So we'd like to acknowledge with respect those lands and those stories of our people. So we introduced ourselves a little bit already, but both Tom and I work for Indigenous Tourism Alberta. I am the Director of Industry Development, so I'm everything development-wise. And then Tom is our Director of Marketing, so everything that is marketing-wise. So we've come together, our two departments, to really talk about, visitor readiness from a development side, but also from a marketing side too. So we hope that we're able to provide with you guys some good information. So when we look at our workshop outcomes today, I'm going to briefly go over what does it mean to be visitor ready. Taylor and Curtis in their workshop, they had really dove into this. So if you end up leaving this webinar still kind of a little bit fuzzy on those steps to become visitor ready, make sure to check out that workshop. And then I'm really going to dive into hosting visitors and developing meaningful experiences. This is like one of my favorite parts of tourism. I think that the reason why people get into tourism is to provide people with a good and meaningful experience. And so we'll chat about that. And then I'll pass the talking stick over to Tom, who's going to be going over keeping your marketing going and growing. And then, we'll even chat about those next steps and supports towards becoming market ready. So if you're tuning in today, you've probably heard of Indigenous Tourism Alberta. If you haven't, though, we are a not-for-profit membership-based society. So we were incorporated in 2018, and we have 182 members across the province of Alberta, both members who are in development, just starting out with a business idea, all the way to members who have been in tourism for 30 years, and they work with international travel trade, which is super exciting. So we've really put together these workshop series to help our members get to the next levels or stages of business to whatever success means to our membership. So again, our mission really is to grow and promote authentic and sustainable and culturally rich Indigenous tourism experiences, showcasing Alberta as a premier Indigenous tourism destination. Okay, so we're tuning in here today to really learn about visitor readiness. When you look at that word, you know, we have in development, visitor ready, market ready, and export ready. So when we look at visitor ready, what it really means is that you are ready to host visitors. You're ready to have people come to your business. So some of the things that you need to have in place to be a visitor ready business is, of course, signage, wayfinding, so that people know where your business is, they know where certain things are. It's important to have hospitality and even service training for your staff. Pre and post experiences in itineraries. So when you're about to host people at your experience, it's important for them to know where they're going to be going, what they need to be bringing, where they need to park, all these different things. And then of course, the follow-up afterwards is just as important, so that you can make sure that they had a good time, they can provide feedback, all these different things. It's also important that at this stage, when you're ready to start hosting visitors, that you have year-round contact. So people can get a hold of you through telephone and email. This helps to legitimize your business as well, so that if somebody books an experience with you, or they're coming to your shop or to your art gallery or whatever your experience might be, that they can get a hold of you in case something happens or in case they have questions as well. And in line with that, you know, it's important to have those posted operating hours so people know when you're open, so that you don't get to your shop and there's a huge line and everybody's like, I thought you opened at 8, and you're like, no, sorry, 9. So it's important to have our operating hours. And then of course, one of the most important things is to have all your business licenses, permits, insurance, and legislative permits in place, because we have to legitimize it. We have to make it legal. So I'll go through a couple of those things a little bit after we go through some experience development information. But a really good tool that I'm going to give to you guys today, if you don't know the Itac national guidelines, you should, and you should read them. They should be like your Bible. So the national guidelines, it's really a tool to guide you towards success in your business. It breaks down being visitor ready, market ready, export ready, and gives you all of these nice steps. It also gives you some information on cultural authenticity as well. So one of the things that I really wanted to go through today is the difference between products and services and experiences, because sometimes we get these a little bit confused. And so when we look at the differences between them, you know, tourists purchase products or services during their trips, but a major purchase that they make are experiences. So for example, purchasing a meal at a restaurant, that's what's called a service, right? We're all traveling, we all get hungry, we all need to go and get food. So that's a service. But you can make that into an experience when you start to add, you know, local ingredients, or maybe there's a chef talk that ends up happening, or maybe there's music and a live band during the meal experience. So it's really important to differentiate the two, because you can have a service that can become an experience, but a service isn't always an experience. We see this even in art galleries, right? Going and purchasing a souvenir, that is a product that people purchase, but you can turn it into an experience when maybe they take a workshop on how to make that souvenir, on how to make, you know, an authentic dream catcher instead of buying one in the Banff stores from China, all those kind of things, right? So we can make our products into experiences. And when we have our experiences, we want them to be meaningful, right? That's our whole reason why we're in tourism. And there's a big shift between just fun tourism experiences and something that's called like an experiential tourism experience, where the guest who comes leaves truly feeling transformed. They feel like they've been a part of something. They are talking about it afterwards. That's free word of mouth marketing, which is awesome. And it all starts with designing a really meaningful experience. So there are 3 essentials when we're creating a meaningful experience. We want to make sure that we have cultural authenticity, incredibly important. If you want more information on cultural authenticity, check out the In Development workshop with Kaylin Curtis on our website. 2, there needs to be demand for it. Demand means that people want to come and experience it. They want to come to your experience. And then 3, profitability. It has to make money, because then at the end of the day, you're not just spending money to allow people to have a good time, but you're actually able to sustain your business financially. So I have a question for everybody. This is for everyone in the group chat. Can you share a tourism experience that you've had that was positive? And what made it really enjoyable, or what made it a memorable experience? So feel free to chat that into the group, because it's important for us, to reflect on fun things that we've even done in our lives during tourism experiences and learn from them, right? We don't want to reinvent the wheel. There's some really awesome tourism experiences out there. And there's usually a nice formula to follow. So I'm going to start going through a little bit of that formula, and I'm going to keep an eye on the, look, oh, Tom said one. Tom had a bike tour where the guide gave us amazing stories about the back alleys of the city. That's super fun. I love that. So feel free, everybody, to chat in a meaningful experience that you were able to take a part of. So when we look at experiences and the formula kind of behind them, some of the first things is we need to look at the basic components of your experience. Where is it going to take place? What activities are going to be included? All of these different things. And then we also want to look at how will these basic components be made into memorable experiences for customers. Oh, Brian had one. Oh, a Mexico trip. There was a pirate ship with pirate fighting play. That's so fun. That's so exciting. I love it. So you can see it just from hearing about these different experiences, right? They were unique. I bet they followed a certain formula as well, which I'll get into. You can see they were in a back alley, or they were on a pirate ship. You can start to see these basic components of them, and then how they ended up making them into memorable experiences. So we can make things memorable when we bring in emotion, physicality, spirituality, or intellectual connections. So to me, when I hear that, I really think about the medicine wheel, and people can use different ways of creating memorable experiences. But for myself, my mom and I, we got started in tourism when I was 16, and we started working with international tourists. And when we started putting together our experiences, what people were going to do, we really looked towards the medicine wheel, because we knew that we wanted them to have these connections to make it truly memorable. Another really good example is Métis Crossing. Whenever they develop their experiences, they say we want our experiences to touch their hands, their heart, their head, and their hunger, right? So what can they incorporate that will get people moving their hands? What will they incorporate that will get people thinking with their head? What kind of culinary experience will they have where people can really taste things? And then what are they going to provide that will touch people's hearts? So this is very similar. So my mom and I, when we started creating our dark sky story experience, we really wanted it to be a 1 hour immersive experience, right? And so when we started taking a look at it, usually we do about 45 minutes of actual programming, and then we'll do 15 minutes of questions because people always have questions. So we started looking at, okay, we'll probably smudge, we'll probably talk about our drum, do a little bit of a stargazing activity, and then tell some Cree constellation stories. So we were able to break this into the medicine wheel to say, okay, well, when we look at spiritual connection, well, our smudging will have a spiritual connection, same with the drumming and the star stories. We looked at the emotional connection. We wanted our guests to, close their eyes to hear the drum. We wanted them to have an emotional connection with sharing the medicines and hearing the stories and the songs. Then we looked at, that physicality. How are they connected to one another? We usually pass the medicines around so that then people can smell them, right? So we're bringing in that physical element. And then, of course, that emotional element, the emotional connection to the land and to the stars. Of course, that emotional connection when we do storytelling. Teresa popped into the chat. Teresa, I'm so happy you're here. So Teresa said, she went on a guided ice walk with Tim Patterson and Bernie from Zuckman Guiding. They brought together knowledge of physical, spiritual, and cultural connection to a place in a way that I've never seen done so well. Absolutely. That I was able to go with Teresa on that experience, and we went onto the glaciers, but instead of it just being like a typical glacier walk, Tim and Bernie really shared stories about the glacier. And, we smudged before we went onto the glacier, and we learned about Indigenous perspectives of glaciology, which was really, really cool. And then another question that you want to think about is, how will you incorporate Indigenous culture into your experience in an authentic and meaningful way? Of course, this isn't necessary. You don't have to have an Indigenous cultural experience. We have many members who have, just regular experiences, but I think one of the beautiful things about being an Indigenous person is we all have our own unique connection to the land, to our cultures, to our languages, and to our stories. And that is really unique and makes us really special as people. And so I always recommend for people to incorporate their indigeneity in some aspect. So we just wanted to always think about how are we doing that in an authentic and meaningful way. All right, so remember how I was talking about this formula of memorable experiences? So when we look at creating memorable experiences, there is kind of a framework that we do want to follow. So I want you to think back, Brian, think back to your Mexico trip. Tom, think back to your bike tour. Teresa, think back to your ice walk. And typically really good, meaningful experiences will follow this kind of mountain. So when we start, even before we provide pre-trip guidelines and necessary information such as maps, transportation, and then when our people get to us, that's when we start to brief them. Hey, we're gonna go on a bike tour today. These are some of the places that we might go and see. Make sure you're wearing a helmet, all those kind of things, right? And then you come into your build-up. So this is when we welcome visitors, we introduce them to their community hosts. We get to share some stories and information to enrich the experience. Then we'll usually have an activity or an experience orientation and safety briefing. When we were on the guided walk with Tim and Bernie, they talked to us about, there's a safety protocol that we have to follow when we're on the ice because we're on a glacier. So we went through all of that. This is really when you get to start creating connections with visitors. So you and the visitor, but then also between the visitors too. One of the beautiful things about tourism experiences is that it brings people together, right? You have a shared memorable experience together. So you can start to get people to interact with one another. And this is when you get to start building the visitors' expectations up to that wow moment. And that's when you get to the peak. So this is your wow moment. This is meant to be the highest level of visitor involvement and immersion, where you're engaging the visitor senses. There's usually also a photo-friendly or shareable moment. So for example, on this ice walk, the peak was when we got onto the ice and we got onto the glacier, and we're on it, we're looking at these amazing like waterfalls, these like canyons within the glacier. Brian, for your Mexico trip, I'm sure the peak was the pirate fighting. That must have been very exciting. And then Tom, I'm sure, you know, there were various peaks that ended up happening based on, you know, landscape, if you were seeing murals or if you were seeing different parts of the city. And then you start to wind down. So this is when the visitors get to reflect on new knowledge, skill, or perspectives that were gained. And then the connections with visitors continue to be strengthened. So something that my mom always does is she always does an ending closing circle where she'll ask, you know, what did you learn today? Or what do you want to talk about? O'Brien said the peak was when the pirate was tossed overboard. I love it, Brian. I love it. And then of course you come to the after. So after your experience is done, it's really important for you to still maintain visitor connections and marketing. Actually, it is good to maintain visitor connection because visitors, if they had a good time, they will often come back to your experiences. A really good example of this is my mom hosted a small family last year for a fireside chat. They loved it so much that they came back the following week, all the way from Edmonton, to take part in her plant walk. And then they loved that so much that then they booked her for a private moccasin making experience. So just from having one meaningful experience, my mom had 2 additional bookings after that with an entire family. And this is also when you can really get your visitors to help you out with your marketing. You know, if they share photos that were taken during the experience, you ask them to write you a review on TripAdvisor, social media, or just ask them to send you a testimonial and toss that onto your website. It just really helps to build trust. So I guess I already answered this, but you know, when you think back to your own tourism experiences as a visitor, you can describe any peak or memorable moments of these experiences. And it's really important to always build an experience up to a peak moment. So I can send this to anybody who really wants it. But something that I really like about this is you can break down your experience, right? You know, maybe your experience has a main theme or a story, because at the end of the day, you can't cover everything, right? In an experience, they're typically 1 to 3 to, well, they can be however long you want them to be. Yes, Brian, I'll send the entire presentation over. But you know, you want to be able to break things down, even from what types of visitors are you aiming to attract? You know, how old are they? Where did they come from? Who will deliver the experience? Where will the visitors be the most immersed and involved in these experiences? How can the experience use the 5 different senses and hands-on learning? And then you also want to think about, you know, minimum and maximum group sizes as well. For warrior women, we really try to focus on smaller, intimate groups. You know, 10 is usually a really nice number. We've done for more. We've done for up to 300 people for some big experiences, but you want to be able to create connections with people as well. And then, you know, also thinking about what resources do you need to deliver the experience to. So I'll send this over to you guys because it's a really great way to look at things. Okay, so I just have a couple more slides before I hand it over to Tom. But I just also wanted to briefly go through some licenses, business registrations, permits, and things required. Remember I said legitimize things. We always have to make them legal, right? And so regulations and requirements for tourism, they vary based on the needs or the type of experience that you're providing. But typically you have to look at, your business license, different permits, depending on where you're operating. Training might be required by the industry and the specific sector. If you want to guide, for example, you need a guiding license. And then, of course, health and safety, and that includes COVID-19, but it also includes, like, let's say you were taking people onto a raft. There are certain health and safety things that you have to follow, such as having PDFs, having whistles, all these different things, right? PFDs, not PDF. My goodness, you can tell that I work at the office too much. So there are some common business licenses that are needed for tourism. So if you're doing any of these activities, you do actually need a guided business license. Let's say you were doing a food experience, you do need a food health and safety license in order to operate as well. So there are certain things that are required. And a great tool is if you take your phone out and you scan this QR code, or I can type in the link for some of our not as techie people. But if you go to this QR code, this brings you to Business Link, which has an amazing resource where you type in the sector of the business that you're in, business sector, and then it brings up all of the licenses that you will potentially and possibly need, as well as links to get them to. So let's say you're starting off, you're an artisan. Well, if I'm an artisan here in Calgary, I actually need to be signed up with the city of Calgary for a municipality business license. So we'll bring that up and it will bring you the link to the city of Calgary in order for you to do that. So make sure that you register your business, that you legitimize your business. And if you need any help, we are always here. Feel free to contact us at membership@indigenoustourisamalberta.ca, because we're always here to help you with licenses, registrations, insurances, all of those things. Because the tourism industry is so different. So there is not a one box fits all. Hey, you need this license. You need different things for different businesses. And then the final thing that I'm going to go through is experience pricing. This is really important. We talked about it's important for us to have cultural authenticity. It's important for us to have demand, but then it's also important for us to have profitability, because at the end of the day, we need to put food on our tables too. So there are a couple of key considerations when you're determining the price of an experience. And there are different ways for you to calculate this as well. I've seen some really amazing resources to spit out a number, but you want to think about, okay, what are the required resources? Let's say you were doing a beading workshop, to get the beads, to get the sinew, to get the leather, that all costs money. So you want to add all of that up. You also want to take into consideration how much was your insurance and permits as well. You want to make sure that you are paying your guides and your staff with equitable wages. You also want to think about the logistics. And then, of course, the minimum and maximum number of visitors required. So all of these costs kind of add up, and then you can divide them. Something that I really want to make sure that our members don't do is don't undervalue yourself. I think a lot of times our members are paid a little bit less. And I want you guys to know that your Indigenous knowledge and the knowledge that you have on your culture is worth as much as other tourism businesses within Alberta. And so don't undervalue it yourself. If you ever need help with pricing out your experience, again, reach out to us. We are happy to help you. We're also happy to help connect you with some of our members who have gone through this, to make sure that you guys are getting paid properly and good. So this slide I always just like to bring up because it kind of has, you know, those next steps things that we need to do. You can also find this on our website through our development matrix. We have this on our website. So www.indigenoustourismalberta.ca development matrix, and it will give you all of the little checks that you need to complete. So it gives you a nice way to move forward with your business. So when we look at our visitor readiness, you know, we have these different things in place. And then of course, when we look to wanting to become something that's called market ready, that changes. And what really changes is you end up creating a website, a good website, with contact info, you have promotional materials, you communicate and respond to potential visitors year round, and you start to get ready to accept even advanced reservations too. So Tom and I will have a webinar all on being market ready next week. So if you're interested in that webinar, please feel free to sign up. And then Kayla and Curtis also did a workshop on being market ready, and you can find that on our website too, because it was all recorded. Then I'll send this into the chat box as well, but we of course always keep up to date with funding, grants, and loans. Make sure to sign up for our newsletter, because whenever we have new funding or new things that are coming up or new workshops or conferences, all these different things, we really send them out through our newsletter. But of course, as a member, you will probably receive it through an email from Curtis as well. But our newsletter always just has really good information in it. And then of course, there are always some amazing startup business resources. We grow our members through a community, and we're really excited that there are some really amazing businesses who are a part of that community too. So that's everything from me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass the talking stick over to Tom, who's going to continue on in marketing.
Thanks, Mackenzie. I'm just going to share my screen here, and Mac, maybe you can give me a thumbs up when you're seeing my screen. Great. Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for coming today. It's nice to be here. And I'm going to talk for the next little while about marketing. And we'll cover these things today. Branding your business, understanding social media. We'll get a bit more into that. Consistency and sustainability, and a little bit on analytics and data. So we had a presentation earlier this week, and I'll share this link at the end. You can see what we talked about before. It was really about getting started in marketing. And this is sort of the next step. So it's taking one sort of step above that, beyond sort of the grassroots word of mouth marketing, really getting into like sort of the fundamentals of promoting your business and marketing your business and finding the right customers and that sort of thing. And one thing I'll just reiterate before we really dive into it, especially when we talk about branding, is all the stuff that Mackenzie talked about creating a great experience is like the first step in marketing too. I think you know, if you don't have a great experience or if you don't have a great product, it's really tough to market. So really do the fundamentals on your business, on your experience, and then marketing will sort of naturally come out of that. They're not completely different things. They really exist together in an important way. And that applies to branding especially too, because branding, it sort of has this, you know, aura about it that it's very complicated and then it takes, special people to do it, but it's not at all. You know, branding really is about telling your own story. Like it's, you know, the essence of branding is giving meaning to your business in the minds of consumers. I've heard some people describe branding as what people say about you when you're not in the room. And that's a good way of thinking about the start of your marketing as well. What do you want people to think about your business, about your experience? And I think if you've done all the development work about your experience and you have a good experience, you've probably done 80% of the work on your brand as well, because it's the same thing. That's what I mean when I say how to get started with branding. You're probably already doing it. If you've developed a good experience, you've done a lot of it. You know, and branding really is about all of the things that your business stands for. It's the story you tell about your business. It's the stories you share. It's you as an entrepreneur. All of this stuff makes up your business. So there's a few little things you can ask about branding when you're just getting started, such as, who are you? Who are your customers? And then it's really linking those two things together. I think the sweet spot of branding is like you and your customers and where they come together in a meaningful way. So it's really what the stuff that makes your customers care about your business. And when Mackenzie talked about an emotional part of your experience, I think that's a huge part of your branding as well. That emotional connection is really key to your branding. And I love the anecdote that Mackenzie had about her mom and the repeat customers. I would bet that the reason they keep coming back is because they feel like a real emotional connection to Mackenzie's mom and the story she's sharing, the experience they had. And that really is key to it. But there are lots of ways to connect emotionally through marketing. And I have on here Super Bowl ads versus Olympic ads, just because I just noticed this week as we were watching all of these ads. They struck out at me. And they're both examples of how you can connect emotionally with customers, but in different ways. And so what I noticed in all the Super Bowl ads, I don't know if you guys watched any of them, but a lot of them were funny. They were trying to connect to people with humor. And I really think that's because they were thinking about the audience who watches the Super Bowl and the context in which they're in. People are gathered together. There's a party atmosphere going on. And so they try to be funny. They try to sort of get in with the party and really connect people that way. Whereas I've noticed when you watch the Olympic ads, the emotion that a lot of the Olympic ads use is inspiration or stories of heroes. And they're really trying to like get to your heart and make your heart soar. And I think, again, that's about the customers and where they are when they're watching that ad. People get inspired by the Olympics. So it's sort of interesting that way. It's just kind of a useful thing that struck me this week about how marketing uses emotion to connect to people. And no matter what you do, brand is all about you and your emotions. And that's my segue into social media marketing, because I think the first step for a lot of business owners these days in marketing is social media. In our last session, we talked a bit about getting started with social media. So this is sort of like, that was the entry level. This is like step 2 of your social media marketing. And so we'll talk about a number of things around social media. So last time we talked about finding your story. We talked a bit about that today, and that's really about the story you want to share about your business. And it's really tied into what you do and who you are. And then we talked about finding your community. Where is that ideal customer? Which platform are they in? Are they in Facebook? Are they in Instagram? So there's you do a bit of work to find those two things. And today, and a lot of this is about being committed to your story and to your audience, but also being flexible to change, because if we know anything about social media, it's that it seems to be constantly changing. So those are kind of the fundamentals. And then today, I want to get into a couple of things about social media, which is the first step is about the algorithms. And if you spend any time talking to anybody about social media, they'll talk about the algorithms. And I don't know how, sort of where all of you are in your algorithm life, but algorithms really these days define everything you see in social media. So anything you see on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or anything like that, or even on Google, it's built by an algorithm. An algorithm really is just a piece of software that delivers the content to you, that it thinks that you want to see. So in the old days of Facebook, if you followed 10 people and all 10 posted something, you would see all 10 of those things in chronological order. But I'd say 5 or 6 years ago, the big tech companies decided that wasn't good enough, that they found you would spend more time on their platforms if they used some software to try to guess what you like. And so rather than showing things in chronological order, what happens is all of the content gets squished through this algorithm, and the software shows you what it thinks you want to see. So it's based on your preferences, what you've clicked on in the past, the things you've liked or talked about, all that kind of stuff. So that's sort of the first piece of understanding what an algorithm is, knowing that what you're seeing is what a piece of software thinks you want to see. And when you're trying to market on social media, algorithms can be very helpful, but they can also be infuriating because they're kind of a bit mysterious as well. So what I often tell people is like, don't ignore algorithms, but also don't obsess over them. There was a time when marketers were always trying to like outsmart the algorithm. They would like put certain keywords in their headlines of their posts, or they would like use certain photos thinking that they were outsmarting the algorithm. And those days are over. for a couple of reasons. One is like the tech companies have gotten wise to this stuff. The algorithms are much more sophisticated now, and you're not going to beat them. It's just impossible. So just don't try. Just be good. The way to have successful content and successful marketing now is to really connect with people. So if people are connecting to your, if your content is connecting with people, people are engaging with it, if they're liking it, if they're talking about it, that's the key to success. Just be good. There's a couple other things in here that I wanted to mention, be consistent and committed. What we know about algorithms today is we don't really know anything, because the tech companies never talk about them because it's proprietary and a bit of a secret. But the things that we do know is that visual content performs best. So if you have a piece of writing, that will perform to a certain level. If there's a photo, it will be slightly better than that. And if you have a video, it will be even slightly better than the photo. So visual content is important. I'd say try not to pull people out of the platform. So often we want to, a lot of us make sales on our websites. So we want to get people from Facebook out of Facebook onto our website to make that sale. The tech platforms don't like that, because they want all their users to spend as much time as possible in the platform. So what I would say is, yes, at some point you're going to have to get them out of there to make a purchase, but don't try to pull them out of there in everything you do. Keep it engaging, do as much as you can within the platform. And then when you do post something that pulls them out of the platform to your website, you'll probably be more effective that way as well. A bit of a tricky balance. You'll figure it out with time, I think, too. And the other thing is, don't be sporadic. I think consistency and commitment is key to good social media. You don't have to post every day, but also you don't want to post 6 times in 1 week and then post nothing for a month after that. Consistency, I think, is important. And we'll talk a bit more about some tips for busy business owners to be consistent in their social a little bit later. And the last thing here is, if your content doesn't seem to be getting much activity, if people don't seem to like it, or they're not seeing it, they're not liking it, then maybe change it up. You may love it, but the algorithms really dictate these things. So the trick is to do content that you care about, that you're passionate about, that you think sells your business, in a way that the algorithms will accept, I guess is the word. And the way to determine that is if people are seeing it and they're liking it and they're engaging with it. Okay, so consistency and sustainability is really important. And one part of that, I think, for people who are getting started, actually not for people getting started, for everybody, we do this at ITA as well. And in my previous job at Travel Alberta, we were all about the calendars as well. So making a calendar is really important for a couple of reasons. It helps keep you accountable. It's really easy to just not do it. But I find, for me personally, if I've got a calendar where I've put some dates on the calendar where I need to post, it just keeps me a bit accountable to that. It makes things more efficient for you, and you can be smarter. You're not wasting your time trying to figure things out. You can plan stuff ahead of time. It frees up more time in your week. Instead of like obsessing for 3 hours every morning about what you're going to post that week, you can spend a full day maybe planning your whole month, and then you get it out of your mind and you can focus on the other important things about running your business. And having a calendar, you can share it around to colleagues or friends and ask for feedback on it. Sometimes people have great ideas that they can share with you. So there's a bit more about a calendar coming up. So that's just one piece. I also want to talk a bit about scheduling your posts, because for busy business owners, scheduling your posts can be a lifesaver. But it's kind of a double-edged sword, I think. So you can schedule your posts. I often get asked this question, like, how often should I post, or what time of day? And there's not an easy answer for that. I would say the answer is different for everyone, but just sort of keep it adjusting as you go. There's no real magic bullet to which part of the day. It doesn't really matter. I think whatever fits in to your schedule works. But scheduling posts can help, because it does let you you could take a day at the start of the week, do all of your marketing social media work, schedule them through the week, and then you don't have to think about it anymore. So that's really important. The caution with that, though, is I think you still have to check in on those. You don't want to just forget it for a week, but you want to periodically come back, make sure people are commenting, make sure there's not too much negativity. You sometimes want to manage those comments. You can hide or delete people's comments if you need to. So you don't want to just let that stuff run rampant. You want to keep a little bit of control over it if you're marketing your business. So yes, use the scheduling tool, but don't forget about it for long periods of time. How do you schedule your posts? Well, there's lots of ways. There are some third-party platforms or software that will work. We use one called Hootsuite. It's free. It lets you, has a nice little edit box where you can put your picture in there and you can see what your post will look like. And then you can schedule it for a future date. Actually, most of the platforms themselves have good scheduling tools now. Facebook, I know, has a really good one, actually. It's really easy to use. Pinterest, YouTube, you can always schedule your post for later. And so there's lots of options. So the tools are there. They're all free. Do not pay for a tool to schedule your posts. Just use the ones that are available for you there. So scheduling is one good thing too. And that's all about calendars and that sort of thing. I want to talk a bit about tagging. Some people have lots of questions about locations, hashtags, and mentions. I'll just say a couple of things. Like they're all important, especially as a tourism business. I think the most important one is probably a location tag. If you can, on your posts, you want to add a location so that people can more easily find where your business is. And all of these platforms, again, when you're posting something, they usually have an option somewhere in the window that says add a location. All you have to do is click on it or tap on it. Sometimes if it's on your phone, it will just find the location for you, or you can type in a location and select one from a list. If you tag it, you'll get your audience will see location and they're like that, like on the example here, and then they can tap on that actually, and it will show your location on a map. So it's a really easy way of getting people to know of your location. And it's great if you get your customers to do that too. If they're tagging a location, then more people will see it. It just sort of expands the number of people who will see your location. So I really like location tags. They're really easy to use, and I think they're an important one. Mention tags. So this is when you put little @ symbol and then you tag somebody else. So I could put in my post, hey, I love this drumming performance by Warrior Women, and then I could tag Warrior Women, and they would see the post as well. For you, you could tag ITA so that we could see your post, and then maybe we can reshare it as well. You can tag Travel Alberta. If you're in a certain region, you could tag your DMO, Banff, Jasper, Calgary, Badlands. You could tag your nation. Anyone who you think might share your post is a good one. You don't want to flood your post with tags, but if you've got some friends out there who might help share your post, it's good to tag them. In here, I have a little bit of information about user-generated content too, and this is a fancy just way of saying your customers, when they take photos and share them of you, it's a great source of content. And you should ask them to, if you see someone who's tagged you in a post and it's a nice picture or something, just send them a note on the platform and say, hey, can I repost this? And 99% of the time, they will give you permission to take their photo and repost it on your channel for free. Most people are happy to share their content, their photos, their videos. And if they do that and you ask them, almost every time they will say yes to do it. But make sure you ask, don't just take their content without them knowing about it. That's just bad form. Thank your partners and your affiliates. Always give credit where it's due. And encourage your customers and clients to tag you in your posts as much as possible. There is a thing, we see this on the ITA side, and I saw a lot at the Travel Alberta time, where lots of people would just randomly tag companies and businesses in the hopes that they would share their post. Don't do that. It's just annoying to everybody, and it's not effective either. If tag people who you know might share you, or who know you, who understand what you're doing, that's a much more effective way than just randomly tagging a bunch of people in it. There's also hashtags, which used to be more important. They were important in the early days of social media as a way of grouping content together. So you could hashtag Alberta, and then when people would tap on that, they'd see every other post with a hashtag Alberta. The algorithms have sort of taken over that role. I still recommend you can put hashtags on them, but the algorithms kind of do that for you in a lot of ways now. So not as important as it used to be, but it is a good way of organizing your content if you can. So that's about some of the sort of little tips about social. It's sort of level 2 tips. The last thing I want to talk about was insight and analytics. And this can be a bit intimidating for people because if you ever are in your Facebook page, especially on your Facebook Creator Studio, there's often a button now that says data or analytics. If you click on it, you can just get flooded with data. everything you could ever want to know about your posts, from how many people saw it to where the people are located, how long they spent on it, how often they clicked on it, how often they didn't click on it. It's sort of amazing how much data is available, maybe a little creepy sometimes too. But as a marketer, it's great information because it gives you insight into what's working and what's not working. So I know it can be intimidating when you dive into the analytics. You know, this is from Instagram, this one's from Facebook, and this one is from YouTube. But there's a couple of things that you can think about. One is, don't get overwhelmed with all the data. The key, I think, is to focus on just a couple of metrics that are important to you. And that can be different for every person. But a couple of recommendations I have are use the data to figure out who your audience is. If you see certain types of people engaging with your content a lot, that might help you figure out who your target market is. So if you see a lot of, I don't know, 45-year-olds from Germany are really into the post that you're doing, well, then maybe at some point in the future, you can think about doing some marketing in Germany. If you see a lot of, millennials from Edmonton who are suddenly interested in your posts, that's also good information about your audience. Maybe you can start targeting people in Edmonton. So just sort of pay attention to the audience. Also pay attention to what likes, which performs better in your content. Sometimes you can see, if you post 5 things, you'll see which ones tended to engage or more people engaged with. That's really important to know as well. If something's really off the bottom and not doing well, maybe not do that again. If something performs really well, do that more often. It's just as simple as that. Don't overreact from day to day. I also say look for trends, like look over a month before you make any drastic decisions. And look for long-term trends over these things too. So if something doesn't perform very well, don't just completely change your strategy. Give it some time. Sometimes it takes time for things to catch on, especially the platforms are much different as well. Facebook, for example, is instant. YouTube, often it could be 6 months before you really know what performed. So, give it some time. Here's some key metrics. When you really start getting into marketing, you'll hear these terms a lot. Reach is how many people saw your content. So that's just a raw number of people who were scrolling on their phone and saw your post as it whipped by their face in front of you. Engagement is how many people interact with your content. So that's people who tapped on it or liked it or commented or shared it. That's an important one too. And a good overall metric to keep an eye on is your engagement rate. So basically, you take your reach and your engagement and you divide them. And it gives you a sense of how many people who saw your post who actually were engaged enough to do something to it. And believe it or not, I know this number is always shocking to people, 2 to 5% is a pretty good number. It's really a volume game. It's crazy in marketing sometimes when you spend a lot of money on a marketing campaign and think that only 1% of people saw it. Well, that's actually pretty good. That means you're doing something right. That's the number of people who are engaging with things too. So I would pay attention to that. My favorite metric personally is time spent. So this measures how much time people spent on your content, because it shows you that people were actually liked it. They're actually spending time reading it or watching it. I think that's a better metric to me personally than ones where just people see it, right? If it's just whipped by their eyeballs, I don't know how effective it is, but if people actually spend some time with it, that's a good one. I've got my eye on the clock here, so I'm going to whip through a last few things here. As far as calendars goes, the challenge for this week is to level up your calendar. If you want a social media calendar, just Google it. There are a million free versions on the internet. Find one that works for you. Try to fill it out for a month. Pick a couple focuses on your content. I call these content pillars. So whether it's going to be, I'm going to focus on wildlife and language. I'm going to teach people about language this month. Do a few posts on that. At the end of the month, look back on it. What worked for you? What was good? What did you like doing? And what performed well in your analytics? And that will give you a good way to move forward on your next month. And that is the end. Wow, we're down to the wire. We went quickly through to the end, but I want to leave a little bit of time for questions if there are any. So thank you, everybody. And if you have any questions, go ahead and type them into the box, and we'll spend the last few minutes hopefully addressing some of those.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Tom. That was awesome. Yes, so any of our members, if you have any questions before we wrap things up today, feel free to type them into the chat box or into the question and answer box. Any one of them works. But yeah, we would also just like to remind everybody that we do have 2 more webinars that will be happening next week on Tuesday and Thursday at this time as well. And so we're going to be going into a little bit more of market readiness and then of course export readiness as well. In the chat, I sent some of the PDFs. We'll also link them to in our website. And then of course, I also sent our ITA development matrix tool, which is that tool I was telling everybody about that has these nice little check boxes on what people need to be working on. And then Tom just sent over his beautiful marketing presentation. So with that, I don't see any questions in the box unless somebody's like, oh my gosh, like I'm typing, but I'm just a slow typer, then you can like raise your hand or something as well. But I think for right now, we might be good. So again, thanks everybody for joining today. We look forward to seeing you all in the future, and don't ever hesitate to reach out to Indigenous Tourism Alberta. We're always here to help you out.
Thanks,
So
everyone.
thank you. Have a great day, everyone.